Here is a sordid question of sorts that should have been left unanswered. What do you get if you take inspiration from every bottom-of-the-barrel high school anime romance story, but set it in college and purposely make the protagonist an unlikable knuckle-dragger? God dag, mine felles anime enjoyers. I welcome all of you to my review of the first and second season of the cultural milestone anime Kanacho Karishimasu, or rather Rent a Girlfriend as it is known colloquially. My name is Benjamin, also colloquially, and boy do I have a treat for all of you. Meet Kazuya Kinoshita, the main character of Rent a Girlfriend. He is a 20-year-old college student and an untalented, forever virgin disappointment to his family, who somehow wound up in a budding romantic relationship to supporting girl number 1, Mami Nanami, a beautiful blonde North Germanic Japanese girl from his college. And as is the case with budding flowers, they can quickly be plucked up right from under you. After a month of having dated, roughly translating to about 5 seconds of screen time for us viewers, Mami chooses to break up with Kazuya, as she claims to have never really been interested in a virgin like him to begin with. Her words, not mine. This, however, is something that is only ever conveyed through her inner dialogue. Therefore, Kazuya is conveniently never made aware of her slightly sinister nature, which then grants the author liberty to include Mami in the story sporadically whenever he deems it to be appropriate. This truly shocking series of events rattles Kazuya to his core into a deep depression of watching cooking and alpha male motivation shorts on YouTube. At his wit's end, having been haunted for weeks by nightmares wherein him and Joe Rogan are high on edibles and clad in elk costumes, conversing about Polish jiu-jitsu, Kazuya happens upon an app which allows him to play pretend boyfriend for a hefty fee of shekels. Finally, Kazuya has found the motivation he needed to pull himself out of his addiction and back into reality for good. The opportunity to spend reckless amounts of money on what is essentially borderline prostitution. Through the app, he meets the token tsundere, a main love interest of Rent a Girlfriend, Ichinose Chizuru. She's the perfect girlfriend, loyal but honest, cheerful, intelligent, goal-oriented, and most importantly, packing a set of deluxe double dooders. Kazuya immediately falls for the charm of this unobtainable beauty, not having learned from his last relationship, or perhaps not having listened to enough emo rap to understand that scheming lassies have the most irresistible fatties. He is therefore shocked when he comes home from his first date with her, opening a message board he frequents and finding out that he has in fact been fooled into believing Chizuru's lies. It was all a ruse. She was not actually in love with him, but was violating his ego to rob him of his gold that he received from his dad to pay for his living expenses. He decides to show her what's good by going on a second date with her, that he's paying for, and looking like an absolute psychopath in public by attempting to rip into her for the job that again he's paying her to do, only for her to drag him away and reminding what's the nice way of putting this? mentally challenged Kasia that it's not her fault he cannot seem to get his dick wet. However, as Chizuru is in the middle of her monologue, Kasia is called by his parents who request that he urgently come to a hospital he has been to before, as his grandmother has just collapsed. He runs off, and being the diligent main girl of the story, Chizuru decides that it's best she follow him, as they are still within the time frame that Kasia has paid for, and it will be against company policy to not get that cash, boy! This is where the central conceit of Kanojo or Karishimasu rears its ugly head as Kasia, ever the wise man, decides to introduce Chizuru to his family as his real girlfriend. His grandmother is of course overjoyed, lamenting how she believed this wet stool would be a virgin forever. She quickly runs off to inform her undead girlfriends of the big news, at which moment I immediately understood how the situation would play out with my genius level intellect and keen understanding of the coveted anime rom-com subgenre. As his grandmother comes back, it will turn out that one of her friends is Chizuru's grandmother. Naturally, how else could the author force this poor girl to end up with a sad loser? This of course forever traps Kasia into paying Chizuru to be his pretend girlfriend, and it therefore also traps her into developing a romantic interest for him. It turns out that they also go to the same college, and as we will find out over the next few episodes, this is a major hurdle to Chizuru, as she has other ambitions in life besides being Kasia's inaccessible savings account. But why, you may ask? Can't they just tell their families that they have broken up and leave it at that? Good question, viewer. It is one the author also took into account, and promptly chose to throw out the window. Okay, then what's the explanation? And I say to you, just don't think about it, okay? We need to move this fucking plot forward somehow. Maybe they're just like really shy or something. Ah, yes, what a satisfying explanation. And look at that, I've just about summed up the premise of this show. Of course, the rest of the season continues on in traditional fashion, with Kasia's crazy ex wanting to ruin his relationship with Chizuru, not knowing that she is an escort, and him slowly, and I mean slowly, getting introduced to two more romantic interests throughout the course of the first season, both of whom's meetings with Kasia I will attempt to describe briefly.
So that was a fucking lie.
Bing bang!
First, we have Ruka Sarashina, the cutest but also clingiest girl of the bunch, who debuts in the 6th episode of the first season and is of course also an escort. She meets Kasia under dire circumstances, having to go on a double date with Kasia, Chizuru, and one of Kasia's equally pathetic friends, Shun Kuribayashi. She figures out almost immediately that Chizuru is not Kasia's girlfriend, but is in fact an escort, and informs Chizuru of her revelation, who then conveys the situation to Kasia. When leaving the double date, Kasia decides to stalk her as he's afraid that she will leak Chizuru's secret to her knowing friends and family. While Kasia attempts to convince Ruka not to expose Chizuru, Ruka becomes very flustered and accidentally falls down a flight of stairs, from which Kasia saves her. Seriously though, why? She later comes clean that she was actually interested in meeting Kasia to begin with, because she had heard from Shun that Kasia, in the 4th episode, had saved Chizuru from drowning while they were on a beach vacation with some college friends. She had her reservations about him, because she rightfully believes all guys who pay for escorts are vermin, but is convinced that she has seen a different side to Kasia after this happenstance. Unlike Chizuru, Ruka is unabashedly attracted to this guy and is not afraid to show it, saying that she will not expose Chizuru's secret, but only if Kasia goes out with her, clinging onto him as if he were a teddy bear, a certifiably sticky, sweaty bear. The last love interest that we are introduced to in Rent-A-Girlfriend is Sumi Sakurasawa, an inexplicably shy girl who shows up in the checks notes 11th episode of the first season. She is a friend of Chizuru who has asked for help with, wouldn't you know it, getting better at her job as an escort, as she struggles talking to clients due to her abnormal shyness. Chizuru therefore asks Kazuya if he could do her a favor and go on a paid date with Sakurasawa. Of course Kazuya accepts this offer, presumably frothing at the mouth at the idea of getting one step closer to concluding his dialogue tree with Chizuru and getting in her panties. I'm gonna keep this extra short, cause you know the drill by now. Some convenient bullshit happens, and Sakurasawa quickly falls in love with the protagonist. I could also talk about some of the other characters in the show, but to be frank, they don't exactly offer much. They're mostly there to move the plot forward and to be really jealous of how much puss Kazuya is supposedly slaying. His two best friends have their moments, but to the story overall they don't really matter besides a couple of interferences. They also don't attract the largely male audience that I assume this channel will most likely appeal to, so we're just gonna act like they don't exist and move on. The positives, kind of. All this negativity aside, I did enjoy the first few episodes of the show, while acknowledging that a lot of the circumstances that move the plot forward are so unbelievably convenient you could almost taste the contrivance. The characters were also funny at times, and I didn't necessarily hate the protagonist. Sure, he's pathetic, but that's the point, right? He's literally paying for an escort. Rhetorical question, were the people writing reviews on my anime list and the like expecting the guy to be like Ryan Gosling? His mediocrity, if anything, is a good starting point for the story because it means that Kazuya has room to grow as a person. This is helped by the fact that Chizuru is not afraid of speaking her mind when confronting him about his shortcomings. I genuinely meant it when I said that she is honest, and that's a quality which not all shows like these have. A strong, independent woman who don't take no shit from a man. A good example of this is when Kazuya attempts to pity himself at the end of the first episode, and Chizuru points out the fact that he's acting exceedingly self-absorbed.
その恥ずかしい自己陶酔シーンに私を巻き込まないでくれる？
てめえだって日頃くっせえ芝居してんじゃねえか。
私のは仕事よ。臭い上等だわ。
Holding a one-sided conversation and not understanding that the other person is disinterested in it is something that, to some degree, I think a lot of us can relate to. Even me, as exceptional of an individual as I am, one who slays pussy with unequaled pedigree, have to admit that I understand where Kazuya is coming from. This whole scene exudes meta honesty, as I assume it is a somewhat self-biographical look into this type of person. Excuse me, but what is that supposed to mean? Look, all I'm saying is that we're all special and unique in our own ways. It's obviously also a very cathartic moment considering the things Kazuya did in the first few episodes to deserve this kind of treatment. He could only really blame himself for how things turned out. Initially, my impression was that people disliked this show so much Not because it is any worse than all the other garbage that gets released every season, but because it's hard for viewers to want to relate to such a pathetic main character. In the very least, this show could have been something different, with a premise that defies the anime standard of having a protagonist that is designed for a specific target audience to want to see themselves in. But of course, with the tone I've given off in this review so far, you know that did not end up being the case. But we'll get back to that later. Don't you worry, we'll definitely get back to that later. Because this is the positive baby goo goo gaga part of the review. One of the more interesting aspects of this show is the maybe unintended social commentary about how, especially young men, are expected to derive their feelings of self-worth in society, in the sense that Kazuya can only conceptualize his own worth through the perspective of whether he believes attractive women see him as a potential partner or not. This is of course only my interpretation, and although there are scenes that kind of imply this in the first season, it may only be coincidental.
30分だけでいいから。
おばあちゃんには別れたっていう約束でしょ。
まだ心の準備が。
知らないわよ。
ばあちゃん、あんたのことめちゃくちゃ気に入ってて、嬉しそうにあんたのこと話すばあちゃん見てたら言い出せなくて、とにかく頼む。
無理よ。規約第3条3項、当社タレントに自宅や社内とプライベートな空間への立ち入りを強要する行為を禁ずる。大人ならこれの意味がわかるでしょ。嘘をつくならけじめを持って後回しにした時に人は子供になるの。第一、今日はレポート書くって決めてるから。さよなら。
However, this initial interpretation I had that there was some sort of social commentary built into the series progressively became rather dubious, considering the fact that the show spends most, if not all of its time, not having Kazuya develop as a person outside of his increasingly desperate moves to get Chizuru's affection, having to continuously purchase dates with her. Speaking of which, the rental girlfriend aspect of the show I'd say feels very culturally relevant even to me as a Eurocuck, with dating apps like Tinder and subscription platforms like OnlyFans coming to mind. And whether you are inclined to agree with this statement or not, these platforms to some degree undeniably prey on a lot of young men's loneliness to make money, which in that sense is not that different from an app that lets you rent a girlfriend. But the show chooses to portray this as if it were somehow a positive influence, in the sense that the rental girlfriends supposedly provide the customer with some level of happiness. Now, I don't know about the rest of you, but the thought of having to pay a woman to go on fake dates with me does not sound remotely satisfying. It actually sounds thoroughly depressing. I like the fact that the show tries to touch on subjects like these, even if the end result is ultimately disappointing. Critical analysis. I think they could have called this show like the cuckening, but not because Kazuya is the one getting cucked. Kazuya could literally be drowning in pussy by the end of the first season, as there are 3 different women obviously swooning over him, but he's just too inept to act on any of their advances. More like rent a backbone, am I right? Obviously, this is typical anime bullshit. Nonetheless, I cannot stress enough how unbelievably frustrated I got watching this show. Perhaps it doesn't help that this is the first time I've ever forced myself to watch a show out of a sense of an obligation to myself because I was motivated to write a review. Whatever it was, I was left very frustrated at Kazuya's indecisiveness, as he has a girl, Ruka, outright saying that she wants to fuck him, but then watching on as he keeps on trying to please Chizuru while technically having agreed to date Ruka. And then they include an additional romantic interest to the cast that didn't need to be there. I guess manga rom-com writers just really don't like odd numbers, huh? as if Reiji Miyajima had a bomb strapped to his office in case he could only come up with 3 romantic interests for the manga. And it's not as if Kazuya is some saint who's gonna abstain from sex until after marriage. In one scene of the show, his friends ask him how many times he has masturbated so far that day, that being 3 times, and I shit you not, there are multiple scenes in this show where they show him masturbating. One of these is maybe a minute or longer of him just fantasizing about having sex with mommy while at home, and that's fine. We all masturbate. What irks me is that I know none of this will actually come to fruition later on in the show, so what's the point of wasting time on teasing it? Oh, yeah. I guess that makes sense. And honestly, the rest of the cast also found creative ways to get on my nerves. Take Chizuru for example, for whom I'm gonna have to walk back the positive feedback I gave before, because the author is very selective about when he wants her desirable traits to come out. Sometimes she is confident and assertive, and at other times she seems unable to make any real decisions regarding her relationship with Kazuya. It is of course true that humans are complex and that our surface level motivations can change from one situation to another, but her shifts in motivations just come across as so contrived. And as you move further into the show, the worse the erosion of her positive character traits gets. At some point, I seriously started to feel sorry for Kazuya. It's not necessarily wrong to say that he put himself in this precarious situation, but can you really blame him for continuing to pine for this woman when she does literally nothing to fend off his advances? When someone is obviously attempting to get into a relationship with you, and you are not reciprocating those feelings, the chivalrous thing to do is not to keep them around like some lost puppy while dangling delicious biscuits in front of them. As an alternative solution, tell them kindly to fuck off. I know that in many Asian societies, ideas of filial piety are more common than here in the West, but the degree to which Chizuru becomes indecisive when having to admit to her grandmother that she and Kazuya are not actually dating is truly astounding. And it's all in an effort to, again, move the plot forward. It feels inorganic, like the meat at McDonald's or the tits of an anime girl. And I'm not satisfied until I gotten a taste of the delicious forbidden fruit. Essentially, what I'm saying is that I believe something substantial has to happen in this show in order for it to keep the viewer invested, and despite it being caught up in a cycle of Kazuya lusting for one of the 4 girls and then having a conversation about something romance or something Chizuru secrets, ostensibly nothing happens to actually move the romance forward. We already know what the end goal is, that being a relationship with Chizuru. However, with how indecisive these characters are, who knows if the show will ever get to that point. And on God, I will never stoop as low as reading the manga to find out, which is of course a lie. I did read it. For context, the first season of the anime ends at about the 50th chapter of the manga. And get this, there are over 250 chapters of this manga released up to this point in time. What the fuck? How can it possibly take this long to conclude the story when it has one area of interest? This is almost a fourth the length of One Piece. Just think about that for a second. Like, in all seriousness, Kazuya is in college and I had zero idea what he actually studied when watching the show because it's never relevant. Apparently he studies economics and administration, which I found out while reading the manga. I don't even know what his interests are, other than the fact that he likes fish, which I assume is a metaphor for something. Who knows? Write your thoughts in the comment section below, and maybe we can figure that one out together. In the first episode of the second season, Kazuya goes to watch Chizuru acting in a play where one of the actors have the opportunity to be chosen for a movie role depending on how well they perform in said play. In this episode, Kazuya realizes how much of a talented actress Chizuru is. However, she ends up not getting the acting role she wanted because one of the girls she goes to acting school with is like related to the old man who directed the play or something, i.e. nepotism, and it all feels like it's in service of getting the main character's dick wet, as Kazuya spends the rest of the episode promising to continue patronizing Chizuru to help her finance her acting lessons.
来週レンタルするよ。その次の週もまたその次の週もレンタルするよ。
So, at the end of the day, nothing that happens in the show can be unrelated to the main character's love quest, which means that I also have nothing else but the romance to take an interest in, because nothing else is ever given any attention. And honestly, you can't really define struggling to ask out your crush as romance. That is a 14-year-old's understanding of romance, but to iterate, the characters are in fact supposed to be university aged. What audience is the show aimed at again? 14-year-olds maybe? Or perhaps 20-year-olds? I'm not entirely sure, and I don't believe the author was 100% certain either. It also wouldn't be a proper review without the nitpicking bonus round, including but not limited to Arg! I'm a pirate, Kazuya.
うち親いないわよ。この世で一番難しい問題は微妙な距離感の相手へのプレゼントだぞ。ないかな。意外とみんな紳士よ。
そっか。
明日おばあちゃんのお見舞いに行く約束なの。
お見舞いだな。
What are those?
鍵なくした。
So, I am going to call the police, and I mean it this time. I can phone the. I don't mean the local police department. I can phone 911. I can say I'm getting harassed. People are getting death threats. They can track where I live. No matter where you live.
どうする？もうちょっと奥行ってみる？
Most of you people are teenagers still living in your parents' houses. And your parents aren't going to be happy, and even if you're adults and you have families, they're not going to be happy that you're abusing kids on the internet.
Blushy, blushy!
そのパンフ
めちゃくちゃかっこよかった悔しくて俺とボロアパートだからいつも通りなんで俺これってもう
変な人
いいかことそれでなんで
こっちも電話
君どこ木下か目が近
なんでマミさんがここにいた？それってじゃあね。
Inappropriate touching to make you forget the fact that Kazuya is never getting laid.
俺の彼女だよな。
ちょっとどこ触ってんのよ。
今落ちそうに。
支えるなら他のところがあるでしょ。
他ってどこ？
どこ触って騙しでもしないと男の人と飲み会なんてありえないしちょっとずーっと男っ気もないみたいで
そうなんすか？
彼氏は100人くらいいるけどもしかして少女バカ
ほんといいもん持ってんのにちょっとああもう角度厳しい
できるだけ水原に触らねえようにしねえと
ごめん条件反射で
The fucking stalking. Never change, anime. Never change. Ultimately, whether we are talking about the story or the art, what is most disappointing about this show is how formulaic it is. I certainly did not need to spend, say, between 200 to 300 hours sifting through the episodes in search of clips for it to cement itself in my mind as a slugfest of mediocrity. The art and animation. There was never any point in the show where I felt like TMS Entertainment completely botched the visuals. There were no weird layering issues, as far as I can tell, nor any egregiously inconsistent body anatomies. I don't believe any scene from this show should ever end up on R/quality anime, for example, although that is not exactly an accomplishment. Essentially, it's up to par with most other mid-budget anime shows from the 2010s and onwards as far as quality control goes. That being said, I'm not a fan of the art. Anywhere the studio could cut corners, it did. Just pick a random frame and pause the show. What do you see? The flat, sparse shading, blur on unfinished background objects, square-leaved foliage that isn't even fully colored, random circle-shaped miscolorations. Yes, I know these are on purpose, but they're ugly. And the unnaturally rigid line work on the characters' clothes. Otherwise, it bothers me how clean looking this anime is. The world is soft both in its design and its underlying expression, but the setting is fundamentally at odds with this framing. Kasia's world is not a happy place. It is one of adulthood, of unrequited love and loneliness, which is of course why his issues are only ever treated as a joke. If the art style more accurately depicted Kasia's inner turmoil, it would be a rather bleak, but also more relatable story. Therefore, I feel that the use of the cotton candy slice of life comfort core art style should have been reconsidered for this show. I also wasn't particularly fond of the incessant splicing in of B-roll chibi clips every 5 seconds in what I assume was an attempt to re-stabilize the riddled brain of the typical ADHD afflicted anime fan. Finally, this last critique I have in regard to the art style is kind of a tangent, but whatever. The first season, and not the second one, for some reason, had these lines that are plastered on top of the backgrounds, which to me kinda makes it look like the artists were ashamed of their own work and in the process of resentfully scribbling over it. This particular artistic choice should probably also have been reconsidered. As for the animation, it's not very good. Kanojo Okarishimasu is uninteresting to look at, which is the most significant complaint you can throw at a piece of visual medium. And the fact that it is so generic also bleeds into other aspects of the show. One such aspect being the conveyance of emotions, and when I look at the show, the only emotion I feel at this point is boredom.
Dropped out of school cause nobody was teaching that. The best westerns where a nigga was sleeping at.
The music is incredibly intruding. I'm sitting and watching the show trying to take the scene seriously, but a barrage of unfitting songs are just blasting out the speakers. And not only is it intrusive, but it is also overproduced. They'll write high-frequency melodies, add a bunch of drums, and attempt every genre under the sun. Presumably with the intention of ear-fucking every unfortunate soul that happens to wanna watch this unique little butterfly. I like it when the music in a show is 1. Well made obviously, 2. Consistent in theme, 3. Not overused, and 4. Not overbearing. In this show, it is my belief that the music manages to consistently fail in at least 3 of these categories. Personally, I have nothing against silent scenes in shows and movies. In fact, I would appreciate it if more directors were comfortable with using silence to their advantage. I won't do that myself, however, because I have a $100 microphone. At times, the music even had me laughing at how poorly it clashed with the scene's emotional tones, like this shit is for real embarrassing.
襲ったりとかしませんから。
だってすっぽん食わしたりとか。
そりゃ和也くんから仕掛けてきてくれればそれに越したことはありませんが、お泊まりの段階で目的の一つは達してますから。
In fact, the anime and the manga made me laugh quite a lot. In pain at how hard it was for the author to manifest some progress. But honestly, I can't blame Reiji Miyajima for how this product turned out. Whether this show followed this manga scene for scene or not, Miyajima, like most authors, is just writing what he knows is gonna be commercially viable in the anime market. He clearly has to continue stretching the manga out as readers keep coming back every chapter, which is achieved by teasing the romance to get your hopes up. Only for said progression to be halted indefinitely. And if this wasn't actually a successful storytelling formula, the series wouldn't have spawned the second season and a live-action version. So, good for him, I guess. And I have to put some blame on myself too for choosing to watch this show. I obviously knew what kind of experience I was getting into, therefore I don't think I'll review something like this in future videos. It's been a long time since I watched/read a similar series, that being Nisekoi, I believe. In fact, it's been a while since I regularly consumed anime and manga in general. Point is, you probably shouldn't go out of your way to watch shows that frustrate you so that you can complain about them on the internet. Maybe that's the real lesson here. I don't know. That being said, I can't deny that I, on some primal level, enjoy these types of series. Honestly, sometimes it worries me. What if it's some kind of neurological condition or something? Like, I can berate you until I'm blue in the face with explanations about why I didn't want to see what was gonna happen next, but I know that is obviously a cope because I've been reading the manga, despite the fact that this script was mostly finished about 2 months ago. So, please send help, and also, pro tip, don't stalk women on dates. Wow! This video was way too long, but hey, I guess that's symbolic or something of but the anime was also way too long, or more specifically the manga was way too long, like 250 chapters plus, and there's still no ending in sight. So for the next video, I'm probably gonna try to cut down on the very poor choices I made in terms of just how much content I kind of rehashed over and over again. Like, I understood that there were certain points I probably could have just made once and then not really have come back to, but hey, this is a process, and I am new to editing, and I am new to voiceovers, and I found out the hard way that this was not as easy as I thought it was gonna be. I thought the video was gonna be like 20 minutes long, ended up being like 40 minutes long. I redid probably some of the lines in this video 20 to 30 times, because for some reason, for just some godforsaken reason, I have a very dry mouth. And then I said fuck it and kept those in the video anyways, because this took way too long. And I don't know if that's just some temporary stuff that I have like, I've been sick a lot this last month, so maybe it has something to do with that. I don't know. I also like adjusted the volume of this video. It sounds so different when you listen to it on speakers, as opposed to if you listen to something on headphones. So I found out that the volume was way too high, so I had to adjust that. That took a bunch of my time. And I celebrated way too early, like probably a month ago. I thought like, yeah, this video is done. Nope. But yeah. Anyways, I appreciate everyone who's watched this video to the end. I hope there are some of you. And for those who did, have a good day, have a good month, have a good life. And don't watch too much YouTube. That's a good lesson, right?